It feels like almost every successful band has had some kind of album where they play live and they play acoustic, maybe with a violin or a string section. And I think especially after MTV's Unplugged series, the concept of reworking your songs for a more intimate setting is really not that crazy. What is a little crazy though is the idea of a band playing the Parisian Catacombs. That's something that was never done before until Queens of the Stone Age did it about a year ago now. They recorded a live album and a live video, Alive in the Catacombs, and at the time of recording they officially released it just a couple weeks ago. Now, as I said, it's not really crazy to do an acoustic set. Nirvana's MTV Unplugged is perhaps the most famous of these, and honestly, it's probably my favorite Nirvana album. Foo Fighters did Skin and Bones, Metallica did S&M, I think Bring Me the Horizon did something with a symphony, and so reworking your songs is not really that crazy of an idea, and in fact, the Queens of the Stone Age have done it before. They did an MTV Unplugged set about 20 years ago. A few years ago they released a Mona set. It was the same sort of thing. It was in Australia and they did a stripped down set. And while I think that acoustic sets can be really cool, I think more often than not it just amounts to a band playing acoustic versions of their popular songs. But Alive in the Catacombs feels like something special. It feels a lot more thought out than a lot of these other acoustic records. And so I wanted to talk about it today because I feel like it really illuminates how valuable it can be to revisit your past work. Whenever I initially saw the track list for Alive in the Catacombs, I was actually mildly confused, because whenever you look at it, there are 6 songs and there are no big hits. Queens of the Stone Age's most popular album is perhaps Songs for the Deaf, and there is not a single track from that album on this album. And in fact, whenever they recorded Alive in the Catacombs, they didn't record anything from their first 3 records at all. And really, the track list is just kind of strange. There weren't any major hits that were re-recorded. There's no One Knows, there's no Go With the Flow, there's no Little Sister, there's no 3s and 7s, there's no Make It With You, there's no My God Is the Sun or I Sat By the Ocean. And so what this means is that the tracks that made it onto the record, the tracks that the band chose to record in the Catacombs, are not ones that are particularly well known. If you're a big fan of the Queens of the Stone Age like I am, then you know these songs. If you love Like Clockwork as much as I do, then you know Collapsia, for instance. But really, this is an album of songs that maybe didn't get their chance to shine on their respective records. The first song on here is Running Joke, which has been combined with Paper Machete. Running Joke is a song off Era Vulgaris that didn't even make it onto the original record on US releases of the album. And then I think it's kind of weird to combine it with Paper Machete, which was one of the tracks off In Times New Roman that was released as a single. And then you have the aforementioned Collapsia. And if you asked me to choose any song off Like Clockwork that would have been good for a stripped down set, I would have chosen The Vampire of Time and Memory, or I would have chosen the title track, I would have chosen I Appear Missing. I would not have chosen Collapsia. After that, you're hit with Villains of Circumstance, which I think was a great choice from the Villains record to be on this album. The next track is Suture Up Your Future, which was off of Era Vulgaris. And again, that's a weird one to choose because that means that you have 2 songs off of Era Vulgaris, which is not that beloved of a record by most of the fan base. I freaking love it. I think it's awesome. That record reminds me a lot of The Top by The Cure in that it's kind of weird and experimental and it has its own strange sound. And so as a result, I think that a lot of people don't like it, but it's something that I love. And then to wrap up the set, you have I Never Came, which is off of Lullabies to Paralyze. And so basically from the start, the set list is kind of strange. It's kind of a weird picking of songs. As I've said, if you asked me to predict what the Queens of the Stone Age would have played under the Catacombs, it would not have been these songs. And so whenever the album first appeared, I listened to it, and I listened to it more, and I listened to it more, and I bought the video of it, and I watched it, and I watched the behind the scenes. And the more I've listened to the record, the more I've come to appreciate just how well thought out it is, and how well structured the set list is. Now, as I've said, the idea of doing an acoustic set is not really anything new. I think typically the formula for an acoustic set is you play some of the hits, you play maybe 1 or 2 lesser well-known tracks, you do a cover or 2, and you call it a day. And I think that these can make for some pretty solid sets and good albums. Metallica's Helping Hands album from a few years ago I think is pretty solid, and it's exactly what I'm describing. You have some odd tracks, you have some covers, and then you have some hits. Nirvana's MTV Unplugged album kind of does that same thing, minus the hits. That album is mostly covers and it's mostly weird songs. But Queens of the Stone Age, as I'm saying, they didn't do any covers, they didn't do any major hits. They did 6 tracks that were lesser known, with the exception of Paper Machete being the hit of the record. And even then, I don't think that Paper Machete can hold a candle to The Lost Art of Keeping a Secret, or No One Knows, or Go With the Flow, or 3s and 7s, or any of the other tracks I mentioned. But I think this was a really special set because it was shot in the Catacombs, right? Where there are 6 million bodies buried. Whenever you're in the Catacombs, you're there with the bones and the skulls and the remains of all these people who once lived lives. you're there with the dead. And if you've paid attention to what the band has been up to the past couple of years, then you know that Josh Homme, who is the main force behind Queens of the Stone Age, he got cancer. Whenever they were first promoting In Times New Roman, their most recent album, they talked about it, he just kind of mentioned it in passing. But if you watch the behind the scenes for this live album, then you know that that was actually something he was still struggling with. This record was filmed and recorded a day before he had to go back home and receive emergency surgery. And so in the behind the scenes video, you see this. You see his band members talk about how much pain he's in. They have a cot lying out so that way he can lay down between takes. At this point in time, last summer, they had to cancel a bunch of their live dates because of the fact that he needed to go home to receive emergency surgery. But doing the set in the Catacombs was something that could not really be moved around. The band had asked several times for approval to shoot down there, and they had been rejected, and so finally they get the chance to shoot down there, and Josh Homme has cancer, and so that really sucks, but the band just pushed on anyway and went ahead and recorded the live set. So as I keep on reiterating, the songs that they chose are weird, they're strange ones. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized how appropriate the song choices were for the setting and for the time period. The Catacombs are full of the dead, and then you have Josh Homme, who is struggling with cancer. Best case scenario, he survives. Worst case scenario, he joins those poor souls in the Catacombs. And so the Catacombs are very much a place that encourages reflection and thought. It encourages one to look back on life, and what better way is there to look back on one's life than through your relationships? And really, I think that's the connecting thread that stitches together the entire album. Running Joke is a song about Josh Homme singing about when he was a young boy, and there are certain interpretations of the song that say that it is about their old bassist, the band's old bassist Nick Olivari, who Josh has been friends with since their childhood. Basically, Josh Homme had to fire him from the band and kick him out, which in that case, if the song is about Nick, then in a lot of ways it's also about Josh's own childhood, since they were childhood friends. The song combined with it is Paper Machete, which is about Josh's connection to his ex-wife. Collapsia is a phenomenon wherein you perceive things as being more beautiful than they are, which I suppose is about your relationship to beauty, which informs how you see a lot of different things, but it was a song written for his daughter, encouraging her to persist through dark days. And so in that sense, that song is about his relationship with his daughter. Villains of Circumstance is a song about his relationship to his children. Suture Up Your Future is a really interesting one because it talks about putting the past behind yourself and trying to look ahead. And so in that sense, it's a song about your relationship with yourself, or Josh's relationship with himself. It's a moment of personal reflection, and it's one of my favorite tracks on the record. And then the final track, I Never Came, is about feeling absent in a relationship. It's about leaving a relationship behind and feeling like you were never all that invested in it, which is, I think, in a lot of ways, one of the worst relationships that you can have, one that you're not invested in. All of the songs on the album were ones that have been written over the past 20 years. And I think a major reason why nothing off their first 3 records were chosen was because, honestly, the songs off the first 3 records are great. They're freaking phenomenal records, but there aren't too many introspective tracks. There are definitely some, but a lot of them are just about drugs. Queens of the Stone Age have a reputation for being a very druggy band, and honestly, I think that's 100% accurate.
6 drugs and rock and roll, that's fun.
6 drugs? There's been more than that.
I was thinking about it this morning and I was like, okay, if you look at Rated R, the album, Monsters in the Parasol is about drugs. Feel Good Hit of the Summer is about drugs. Better Living Through Chemistry is also about drugs. I Think I Lost My Headache, probably about drugs. First It Giveth off of Songs for the Deaf, about drugs. And so I think that's why the song choices on this record stand out to me. They're very personal, they're introspective, and they are songs about relationships. And I think this is why it can be really awesome and really cool to revisit the past. As I've said multiple times at this point, none of these songs would have been my first choices for a record like this. A lot of these songs are lesser known, but I think they were the right choice for this record. Pairing them all with one another recontextualizes each song. Recontextualizing every song in this setting in the Catacombs and with a new acoustic arrangement, I think was a really special thing. And this record changes the way that I view the original recordings of the tracks. This version of Suture Up Your Future, for instance, changes the way that I view the original track off Era Vulgaris. I Never Came has never been one of my favorites off Lullabies to Paralyze, but I think that this arrangement is freaking phenomenal, and so it's a track that I love and adore now. And despite Like Clockwork being one of my favorite records of all time, Collapsia has never been one of my favorite tracks on that album, even though Trent Reznor sings on it. But I think the mildly terrifying version of the song found on Alive in the Catacombs really elevates the lyrics. The string section really elevates a track like this. And so with this video, I just wanted to illuminate that idea that basically revisiting stuff is not always bad. Revisiting things and adapting them to the circumstances of the modern day can be really special. Revisiting the past, revisiting past works, and pairing them with newer ones can actually elevate both. And so I think this was just a really special record. I think it's a really special video, and I would recommend checking it out and checking out the behind the scenes if you can. But I really love this band, and I think that this elevates their status even higher. They were already a great band, and they were already one I loved before this album came out, but this album is just incredibly special. And so with that, I guess I will close it off. Thank you for watching. If you're a Queens of the Stone Age fan, that's awesome. Let me know, because I feel like anytime I mention Queens of the Stone Age to anyone who I meet when I'm out and about, no one freaking knows them. And I think that's really a shame, and it's really disheartening because they're a freaking great band. So thank you for watching. Have a nice night, and goodbye.